This is Max, producer of the Cosmic Fuel Pump and head caretaker of the Garden of Eden. For the next half hour, suspend your concept of how things are. Come with us on a journey deep into your heart, where we can meet in a new reality.
That we're them, that's all. Hi, caught in the act. Well, welcome to the revised version of the Cosmic Fuel Pump, where we have moved out of Suzanne's restaurant and into Suzanne's house, where with a lot of help from my friends, some of them being you folks who've come along to make us so beautiful, and some of them being my real buddies, my real playmates, who I am so proud of. I mean, where do you see this show? They have interviews on this show. They have segments on this show. Well, you're going to see them. So I'll just tell you that we are infiltrators, sneaking our way into your hearts to really change reality, to make it a world where we're really all in each other's hearts having a wonderful time in what we call here our Garden of Eden. Rewriting history, writing new history. I'd be delighted to go down in the history books having made a real contribution to a kind of reinterpretation of what the Garden of Eden could be on Earth. So, who are we and what are we doing here? Well, that's what this show is going to be all about. I want to take you to a segment that Greg Houston did with a wonderful, wonderful old friend of mine. I don't know if to call her, but a queen. So, Greg, why don't you tell me about it?
Thank you, Suzanne. That wonderful dear friend of yours is named Jackie Holly. And I think everyone will see why she is such an inspiration to all of us here. I'd like to go directly to that segment, and you'll see for yourself why she is a messenger from Central. Hi, I'm Greg Houston at the Cosmic Fuel Pump, and I would like to welcome Jacqueline Holly as our guest messenger from Central. And I'm delighted to have Jackie here because, in my opinion, she exemplifies what a true messenger from Central is. And that is a person who draws guidance for their life from their deeper self, their real self. Jackie, I would like to know how you first came to distinguish between your true inner self and your outer self, or what we call the personality.
I think when I was young, the way I distinguished between it was that I always felt a certain kind of well-being in myself when I was alone. And I used to read the transcendental poets, and I used to listen to classical music. And I always felt removed from life and from the world and from normal problems that I was having at that time. And when I got older, I became more self-conscious that there was a different state. And now it feels more like a feeling of kind of going into myself purposefully, without books, without music, although sometimes I do that too. It seems like I can go into a place inside through meditation or relaxing in nature, or sometimes being intimate and loving with another human being makes me feel that contact with my inner self.
What did it feel like to first plunge into your inner life rather than your outer life?
The word plunge is good because it was a plunge that I took. I signed up for a meditation class for my very first experience in meditating. And it ended up being a 3-day workshop in the desert, 18 hours a day, from 6 a.m. till midnight of meditation. And that was a plunge for me. And it was well worth the effort, the discipline. And I felt for the first time in my life that I had made direct contact in a conscious way with my spirit life. And although it had not been through my own will, I felt really that it was through God's grace that it had occurred for me.
I love something that you said from your notes. And it was this: empty oneself. Allow the power and the freedom of being nobody special. Can you tell us more about that?
I realized that my specialness was all tied up in all my ideas about myself and all my emotions. And I was just this incredible, complex person. And I was unique. I mean, what made me unique was the way I thought, the way I spoke, how I felt, what I perceived life to be, my physical experience in the world. And it made me unique, and I became very proud of it and attached to it and sort of carried it around myself like, well, I'm special. And having grown up with a sort of a psychological script to be a special person, I had always been singled out. I'd always been the president of an organization, homecoming queen, I had always had that kind of specialness around me with labels, certain kinds of positions in life. And I found that the more I was willing to know that that wasn't my true self anyway, the more I found that I was a very empty being and that I didn't have all that stuff in me when I got to my beingness. I was just like everyone else. I was simple. I was a person who had a quality to love and to be loved. I had an understanding, and I had a will, and I had qualities that were in me, but they were qualities that I could see in every human being, no matter how much they covered them up with their personalities, So I think that was a beginning for me to empty myself and be nobody special and feel very close with others through that non-specialness.
Can you tell us what supportive words you might have for people who are looking and wishing to develop more access to their inner self?
Yes, sometimes people feel such a push in themselves that they're not satisfied with themselves. So they push even harder in life to be smarter, to perform more, to achieve more, to be more beautiful, to look younger. And there's such a push on all of us. And yet the truth is that that push drives us into more of nothing, more of less. And when we can relax and feel we are fine the way we are just a fine being. And the more we can just express the beingness of ourselves, whatever that is, of the goodness, of the lovingness, just our good qualities, I think people will not feel they have to push and drive themselves so much and still accomplish, achieve, and perform at their very highest.
Well, I know you're not disappointed, right? Jackie has this amazing quality of peeling her illusions, kind of unraveling herself so that you can see right into where she makes herself up from. And you can see that, oh my gosh, that's me too, right? It's all of us as one. As well as I know Jackie, as I was watching her segment when she shot it and I was watching it now, I get chills at my spine. It's like I'm discovering her anew each time, which is that wonderful quality that the truth holds. It's fresh all the time. It's not an act. It's not an object. It's making itself up right before your very eyes. And it inspires me. And that, of course, is what we're all doing here on this show. That's what the show is all about. It's about inspiring one another to be the best of ourselves. So what do you feel about it, Greg? What were your comments?
Well, Suzanne, what inspires me about Jackie is how committed she is to our inner life in this drawing from Central, which is exactly what we want to portray on this segment called Messenger from Central. And the commitment that I'm talking about is the dedication that I see in Jackie in drawing her guidance from her inner self, listening attentively to what is coming through to her. And I also see it in her commitment to help other people in that same vein. She's a teacher of meditation.
I know everything.
But of course.
I also know she's going to be back next week.
That's right.
With more of the same, and maybe we can squeeze out even a third segment. I could watch her every week, and I'm just sure everybody else could too. Another thing I want to say about Jackie is to comment on this strange synchronicity that I feel with her. I've known Jackie for years, and it seems like sometimes we haven't seen each other for one reason or another for a bit of time, and then we check back in. And each time it seems like we're at the same edge, a different one from the one we were at last, and yet it's the same one, and then the same one, and then the same one. I wonder what's going on. Who are we? And that leads me to Zane Rothschild, my other great buddy, who's going to be doing the other segment on this show. And we're going to be talking some more about who we all might be related to his segment. And a segment that perhaps will be called from now on Television.
Jackie's the one who gave me that expression, television. I had never quite thought of this medium as television. And who are we really right here? We are the visionaries. We are the new group that is bringing you the messages from the central of our hearts. And my segment has a lot to do with our founding fathers and their visions made into creation, to actuality. Week, I was telling you about my favorite of the founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. I was drawn to him because I had an intuition of who he was, that he was more than just a politician, a unique genius in our history, but that he had a quintessent wisdom, a wisdom that could lead us to virtue, that could lead us to happiness, that could lead us back to God. And I want to share with you some of the things that I knew in my heart that when I went and sought that knowledge, I found. Now, why did I seek that knowledge? Because my road is a path to enlightenment. Not enlightenment that makes me better than anyone else or greater or able to do miraculous feats. Enlightenment, to me, is a place inside our heart where we come home to oneness, where everything we do is a reflection of a truly joyful place inside of us. A joyful place that I will call the reflection of God. Now, Franklin, at the age of 83, said, I commend to all of you the life I've lived. It was a wonderful, a great life, a fabulous life. What was the use of all of this material well-being that we've accomplished? Franklin said that riches and fame and material well-being is really and truly of no great use, that an open heart is all. He was certainly one of our great instructors of how to live a fruitful life, of how to succeed materially. So why would he say things like that? Well, let me tell you why. Because he said that we should free ourselves of the needs to concentrate on food and shelter all day long, that only when we free ourselves of those concerns can we then start to look inside and deal with divine concerns. Franklin was more concerned with our relationship to the divine than any of the other founding fathers. Maybe Jefferson was about the same. They were the best of friends. They said they were like two peas in a pod. I'm reminded right now of a saying of what a real friend is. A real friend is a single soul that resides in two bodies. So let me get back. Franklin knew that if we lived a virtuous life, we would be happy. If we lived a virtuous life, we would be serving God. If we lived a virtuous life, we would be happy, we would serve God, we would make God happy because He wants us to be happy, and the world would be wonderful. That's what Franklin knew. So what is a virtuous life? Franklin said it was doing good to your fellow human beings, serving your fellow humans, your fellow beings, your fellow man. I know that's true. You see, all of this information isn't something that I dug up in books. It's a place that I searched within, and we all can go within, and we know it's true because the truth resounds loudly and clearly to all of us. We all recognize it. We all know it's true. There's no debate. It hits a place in our heart. And I'm trying to communicate a truth that I know. And I'm using Franklin, and I'm using our founding fathers, because I hope that you'll hear that this message, this profound message, is not new. It is a message that has existed throughout the ages of man, as man has evolved into higher consciousness. Now, my ending every week is going to be the same. I ask myself, and I ask you to ask yourselves at all times, whenever you can, try to be conscious of it 100% of the time, but do the best you can. Am I loving the person in front of me? Am I loving all the beings who come before me throughout the day? Am I coming from an attitude of service? Because that's what the reflection of God's love is. A reflection of our love to our fellow beings and a reflection of an attitude of service. If we are, we will radiate pure light. We will feel wonderful joy inside ourselves. We will be the example of God's love. It won't be abstract philosophy. It'll be wisdom which captures the knowledge that we know in our hearts. After all, wisdom is the incorporation of knowledge into our character. So I leave you with those thoughts as I do every week. Love each other, be kind to each other, serve each other. Have a great week. Love yourself too.
What a pull we all have toward one another, those masters and us. It's so obvious that we breathe the same breath, that we live the same passion, that maybe even could it possibly be that somehow we are them? What could that be all about? Zane, let's talk about that.
It is an eerie feeling, isn't it, Suzanne, that we all seem to be a repository of this wonderful knowledge, and the friends that we're meeting and coming in contact with, we recognize them instantly. We were talking just the other day about how we've been drawn together and how we're enlightening each other, how we're bringing this knowledge to the surface, that living with each other and working with each other is a process by which this is all manifesting. And we meet someone like Jackie, and she also fills in a lot of the blanks. And here we are communicating with all of you. And you know what we're talking about. It's this incredible heart space of information that everyone who's had a hand in making this country, that they've all known this sacred knowledge, this wonderful knowledge.
Well, I love the idea of the sacred knowledge, and that perhaps not so much that it gets handed to us, that we go to school to learn it, which is perhaps what we might all have thought when we thought in those kind of linear ways, but that the sacred knowledge is something that's buried within us, perhaps within everyone, and that some people just have access to it, and that so that my wisdom is the same as Benjamin Franklin's wisdom, and that it's getting passed along from some kind of cell within us, you know, some kind of genetic thing that's going on where the knowledge is inside of us, and people like us are tapping into it now. I want to bring you for just a brief moment another person like us who's tapping into it. I want to bring you a little brief segment that my friend Joel Steinberger did for us.
I had been watching the tube one day. I suppose you might say that I wasn't in my best spirits. And in flicking through the channels, I came upon Suzanne Taylor and learned that her show was called The Cosmic Fuel Pump. I can tell you that by the end of that show, and I tuned in perhaps 10 or 15 minutes before the end of the show, and only caught that much of it, that I was beginning to feel charged up emotionally, feeling positive, feeling better about myself and everybody else also. And at the end, there was a title card. I had hoped there would be a title card with a number to call, which I did. And to my great pleasure, I found that by coming to Suzanne's place, the Garden of Eden, whenever I needed to recharge my batteries, I could come here and walk out with a good deal of more energy, physical, psychic, and emotional. And what more could you say about anybody than that?
Well, as the cosmic fuel pump fed Joel, so Joel fed me by recognizing me. When he recognized me and us, I believe more in myself. An idea that I like to think about, and it's also related to what Benjamin Franklin was up to, is the possibility that we can think of ourselves as servants, perhaps. Not here so much to accomplish something in this lifetime, not here to win anything, but here actually to make the creation grow, to actually be a part of this evolutionary process, a necessary part, something that the creation is depending upon. I mean, if the sacred knowledge weren't surfaced in each generation, well, that's the place where we might blow ourselves up. Without a vision, the people perish. Who said that? When we get a research department, we'll have all this handy-dandy data. And is that quite the right quote? Well, if it's not, it's close enough. What it means, of course, is what's important, which is that without the sacred knowledge, without anything guiding us, we go nowhere. Without knowing we're going somewhere, we go nowhere. That does seem to be the way the game works. Well, so here I am, Taylor de Steinberger, passing the sacred knowledge, so to speak, just like my friend Zane told me Benjamin Franklin did to Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was a young kid, so I understand, and Benjamin Franklin recognized him and brought him over to this country. You know, just because these people have famous names Do you think that makes them any more important to the creation than us? Or than you? Who's going to take the job? Will you? I will. Who do you think when you look at what's going on in the world today, where are the great inspirational leaders? Where are the people who have our attention, who are really inspiring us to go in the right direction, as Benjamin Franklin was in his day? When I look around, the people that I respect the most, and there are people I respect a lot, but they don't feel so much to me like exalted leaders. Possibly it's because a lot of them are charging money to teach people things, which I guess is okay, but it doesn't exactly make them statesmen, does it? So maybe actually what it comes down to is some kind of more homespun reality in which the sacred knowledge exists in a sort of more mundane way, namely us. Well, isn't that thrilling? It thrills me. How wonderful to think that we really can be of service, that we really can matter, that it matters to be alive. So what do we need to do to take this assignment? Well, I want to read to you from Carlos Castaneda, who of course wrote about Don Juan, one of my favorite sets of books. I recommend them to all of you. And here's what Carlos has to say in a recent interview. There has to be more to life than just passing through, eating, and reproducing ourselves. So what does it all mean? Why do we live in routines? These are old questions, but the problem is we have never learned to see. We are conditioned to believe that the everyday perception is the only real perception. The art of the sorcerer is to destroy this perceptual prejudice so that one can see past common sense. That's kind of cute with common sense in Thomas Paine. I hadn't even intended that. But, of course, the common sense that Thomas Paine was talking about was the real gut-level common sense, not the sort of everyday stuff that we all kind of sling back and forth at one another and bore each other to death with, while actually the country perishes. So what we have to see is something deeper than that. The things that Jackie talked about, the things that Zane talked about Benjamin Franklin and the founding fathers, the reality that underlies this illusion, the realer self that's underneath this skin that has an ego and attachments, the one that is eternal, the one that is universal, the one where I am you, you are me, and we are all existing in wholeness and in love. Now for that, we really have to get, our real magnifying glasses out for. Or perhaps we have to take off our glasses, knowing that we can't see anything outside and that everything inside is where the truth resides. And now I want to do what I did last week and what I hope to do every week, which is bring you some little tidbits from the real world. Is it the real world? Well, too long a spiel for now. But some tidbits from, what happens in everyday life. Everyday life, of course, exemplifies cosmic life, because the moment we're in is all we've ever got. So this week I went to hear a master. His name was Master Ivanov from Bulgaria. And this is what he said, if I could hear him through the thick accent, something like this. He said, find a philosophy, a point of view to achieve the golden age. He wasn't shy. Don't entertain misery. Widen your horizon. You'll be a model. You'll be very useful and marvelous for all humanity. You must have the greatest high idea. You must have an ideal. And then he spoke about these thoughts as the way we make the divine in ourselves manifest. He was not shy about saying, take the job. And actually the key word he used for how we can all take the job is fraternity. That we need to really get into what that means. Taking the job these days, any days, is living in peace together. Another wonderful thing I saw in the real world this week was Phil Mayer after he won his gold medal for the slalom in the Olympics. And he really touched my heart. He said, after being the first American to ever win such an honor, and his brother coming in second, wasn't that thrilling? Having had a baby the same day he won the Olympics, when he was asked what the greatest thrill was, he said, the baby, of course. Right on, Phil, of course. I like that one a lot. Something I sort of liked and didn't like I saw an article in the paper this week. I didn't like the problem, but I liked the solution. Okay, the problem was that these large firms are polluting. And I don't know, you don't think about it much. How does that happen? Accidents, what have you? Well, I read this article, not accidents. My main concern, said Ira Reiner, whose office this investigating is coming out of, and they're doing a good job. My main concern is that the punishment is not just another cost of doing business. Apparently, the polluting firms just figure that when they get caught, it will cost them less to pay the fines, than to have done the deed. Oh, isn't that a world, where we calculate what's appropriate to do that way? There are tremendous economic incentives to be dishonest, says Barry Groveman from Reiner's office, who actually prosecuted one of the recent cases that I was reading about. He's the head of this committee. We've got to send people to jail, says he, and thereby raise the ante. Well, I'm not so sure about sending people to jail, but I do appreciate, that's a subject for another show. How can we have a more humane system of educating ourselves, all of us, to be better, rather than being so punitive, which has its inherent problems, whether you're, appropriately punitive or not. But I did like the idea that we weren't kind of having a token reality in which so many things keep happening because, you put a fine on it and it goes on. Well, that's an awful reality. And Ira Reiner's office is actually doing something about that, making these people do public service, making them take big ads in major publications, announcing what they've done, and sending them to jail. They're making it matter that we do better, and I like that a lot. And then the last thing I wanted to bring you from the real world was a little example in my family here, where Zane has been making lunch for his little 2.5-year-old, Elon. Takes a little lunchbox to the new school he's going to now. And every day that Zane makes the lunch, Zane says, "Oh, I'm so thrilled to be able to make lunch for Elon." Now, having lived in this world where people find children to be sort of a pain in the neck, it's such a thrill for me to hear Zane be so thrilled about being a parent to a child that I consider to be, almost my own. He's the youngest member of the Garden of Eden and a delight. One of the joys of living here. Well, I want to end this show with another joy of living here, which is a creative product that all of us actually wrote. And I've done this on the show before, and it seems particularly appropriate to close this show with a new Pledge of Allegiance. So, I pledge allegiance to myself, which is also all of you, and to the grand idea of which we are all a part. One consciousness, one intelligence, indivisible, with truth as reality for all. Didn't we do a good job on that one? Well, it's time to end the show now. Except it need never end, of course. If you call us, you can be our friend, you can be on the show. If you know what we're talking about, give us a buzz. We're all going to get together. And keep tuning into us every Sunday night at 10 o'clock if you're in Los Angeles on Group W Cable. Tune into us. Tune into each other, which is, of course, the same thing. All of us tuned into our hearts, the creation, and love. Have a good week. Bye.
We now return you to Consensus Reality, where you can help in creating the world as the Garden of Eden.